everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Champion Spotlight. I am your host, Dr. Megan Brown, owner of Body Mechanics Physical Therapy and the creator of Raise Your Game. So with Raise Your Game, again, we are a physical, mental, nutritional, and goal-setting program oriented to help you become a champion in life. And as always, on the Champion Spotlight, another champion in life. This is Amy Pope Latham. She is a licensed clinical social worker, therapist, and sports performance specialist. She is the owner of Coastal Beaches Therapy here in Ponte Vedra, Jacksonville, Florida. She was born and raised on Long Island, New York, which you guys will definitely hear her accent as we get going. She's also a former NCAA swimmer, a veteran ocean lifeguard, and lover of medical science. And fun fact, she just finished snorkeling with 21 plus bull sharks in the ocean, and she cannot wait to do it again. So Amy, how you doing?
Amazing, Meg. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on here. This is going to be a laugh, guys. It's going to be a laugh. So just be prepared. A little bit of laugh, a little bit of seriousness, a little bit of New York. So here we go.
Cool.
How did you get into being a licensed clinical social worker?
You weren't kidding. A lot of laugh, a lot of New York. Now, growing up, if someone had asked me if I wanted to become a therapist, I would have said absolutely not. No, it just wasn't for me. I saw a lot of analyze this, analyze that growing up, and I said, I don't want to be known as a shrink. There's no way. So my path began, Hurricane Sandy demolished my hometown on Long Island my senior year of college, and it was really in a big moment for me starting to apply for medical school, which was what my heart was set on at the time. My connection's a little unstable, just like my story, yeah. I guess, right? So
we'll roll with it. We'll roll with it.
So yeah, with Hurricane Sandy, I lost pretty much everything. I mean, I'm 5'1", and water was up to this deep, and the only thing I was able to preserve was my last. My whole experience is that I missed out on the opportunities to apply to medical school, and what really turned out is one of the worst experiences of my life turned into one of the best, because I noticed that during my time living in and out of my rental car, I felt the need to get back to my community. I felt like I had to be home. I was living out of my car right off campus on the north shore of Long Island at Stony Brook, and I was like, I just have to get home. I have to bring stuff. It was November, December. I was so inspired by people who brought by little, they brought Christmas stockings at the time and had little cards from kids that said, happy holidays. I was like, let me give back. And I kept doing that over and over again. And word got out about this at school. And then when they celebrated me at commencement for my efforts, it was amazing. I was so happy. And then one of my sociology professors comes up to me and is like, have you ever thought about doing social welfare? No. My mom's like, tell me more. When did she apply? And my teacher's like, well, they're having admissions right now. Just, no issue. Let me tell you this. I have no choice. I did it. And fast forward a billion years later, here I am. I love what I get to do now. And like I said, it really took me in a direction that I never thought I would be in. And for that, I'm so grateful. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, Coastal Beaches Therapy as far as your mission and your brand and what's all behind it?
Yeah, Coastal Beaches Therapy, which also I was looking at from a cognitive behavioral therapy that I did there, CBT, thought it'd be a fun way to integrate, what I love doing. Well, I love doing a lot of things in here, but cognitive behavioral therapy is super fun, but I also love the coastal beaches. So I found a really nice way to integrate two things that I'm very passionate about, beach and helping people. So what I do here is essentially I show up and I'm here to hold space. That's really what Coastal Beaches Therapy is about, holding space for whatever someone needs. Healing, I really believe in this, and I've seen this happen. Healing really begins the moment we feel heard. So I'm able to show up and hold that space for someone when they can just feel heard. And that's not necessarily meaning they're struggling with something. So part of what I do too is I do work with high-performing athletes. Athletes don't necessarily feel like they have anything wrong with them, and that's okay. We don't have to stigmatize mental health anymore and saying that you need an issue to talk to someone. They'll come in just to tell me what's going on outside of the sport. They'll tell me what's going on in their heads during performance, and we'll break that down. And so what I get to offer here is really whatever someone needs, I'm going to guide them through that. But I'm super solution focused. So rather than just having someone come in, I tell them from the very beginning, just letting you know, this is our first appointment, but we're already working towards your last. It's not going to benefit me or you aging in here. I want you out there. And if we can minimize the time that you're going to be in here by focusing really onto the guts of what's going on, you will be out there. And it's amazing. I mean, that's where I get to see people heal. Like I said, and you've introduced me quite beautifully. I love medicine. I love the nervous system. I really believe the body knows what it needs to do to heal. I love that you do that, and you have a similar outlook on this too, Dr. Meg. And when you work with the nervous system, you master the mind. So I go from the bottom up. Coastal Beach is rather than saying we're going to only focus on top down, which means we're going to talk and figure things out. I want things to come from the bottom up. What you feel is going to inform what you think. And if you can combine those two and synthesize the two, you can take off and be brilliant. So that's really where I'm coming from. I want people to really feel that they get all the support they need, because once they do, they take off, and that's why I'm here. I love seeing that. So
yeah, and a lot of what you talked about definitely aligns with what we're doing with the Raise Your Game program. We touch on the physical side of things, the mental, nutritional, and goal setting, and along with that mental stuff, like you said, your body is going to react to what your brain is telling it to do, right? And I think so often athletes, especially as they're growing in their career, they forget that I have to actively think about what I need to be doing in order for my body to be moving the right way. And even vice versa, our body has to talk back to our brain and let it know, like, yeah, that doesn't feel right, or, I need to try this a little bit differently. And I think you said it perfect too, like everyone needs to be able to talk to someone about something at some point in their life. That mental stigma, it needs to be gone. We need to realize, like, there are people out there that are willing to help us, that are willing to help us find that path that we need. And it hopefully isn't a very long process. And, with you, you're like, hey, let's get it going, because you got other things you got to do in life. So I think that's really awesome. In the Raise Your Game quiz, which I know you're going to be taking after this, or at least looked at it on your phone already. There's a question on there that talks about, everything in it talks about your honest opinions of yourself. So this is a very self-assessment type of quiz. And on the mental part of it, one of the questions asks, do you carefully and constructively react to others? So how important do you feel like that is, especially in the mind of an athlete?
It's critical. If I'm going to look at it as hospital, right? We have urgent care, you're going to be hospitalized, and then you go into the ICU, critical. Yeah, it's ICU kind of critical. I mean, it changes the game. Your attitude, your perspective, your output, not just the input, changes literally the landscape. And if we can learn react versus response, reacting and not responding, we're going to have a really poor outcome. That's what we're drilled to do. We see fire, we're gonna go, ouch. No. If we can respond rather than react, we have time to pause. I say this with love because I am a Patriots fan. I love my Tom Brady, even though he's happily going to be down here in Tampa. What makes him so fascinating to watch is because he responds before he reacts. Thankfully, to his credit too, he has a beautiful line in front of him protecting him. So he has that time to set up and respond. And I'm saying that's how valuable this skill is, because you think about it in play, and we look at it as the GOAT who's doing this. He has that time that he sees what's going on, takes in whatever energy he's feeling, channels it, sets it up, throws it, and completes the pass, which is why, again, he has won so many championships, in my opinion. So if you see the people that we look up to and these high-performing, very stressful environments, they can learn to respond versus react, it changes their game. So, of course, I highly recommend that athletes, coaches, parents who want to support their athletes, just even someone who is, let's say, later on in their life, they want to join a club team, so be it. You're an athlete for life. Whenever you want to pick up the racket, the goggles, the baseball bat, football, whatever, lacrosse stick, whatever it's going to be, if you can learn to just take some time to pause, you really don't lose time, you gain it. And you're going to be a lot happier with the outcome when you do that. Versus if you just react, anyone who just touches fire, they're going to get burned. And we know, hopefully, I'm sure you can back me up on this medically, Dr. Meg, is that it's not the burn that hurts, but what makes burns so awful is the recovery afterwards. So you're going to suffer a lot more in the afterburn because you reacted. And that's all muscle memory that as an athlete you're going to take in and you're going to metabolize and digest as the story. And that's how you may develop some yips down the road. Maybe that's where you develop these limiting, blocking beliefs because you reacted and that sent a signal to the brain to memorize that. And that's all you know. That's all you believe you know. So yeah, I think responding, reacting all day, every day, responding first, react when you need to, which is typically never. So respond, respond, respond. I've never met anyone who's reacted and it's gone well.
Yeah, that's true. And, just like what you were saying is when we have these patterns ingrained in us, right, of the reactions constantly, then our brain forms itself to be like, okay, this is our normal response. Whenever this happens, this is how I respond now, when in reality, it's a reaction. So, breaking those habits and learning that you have those not favorable habits, and actually taking that time to assess and then reaching out, in the Raise Your Game program, that's the kind of stuff that we do, it's not just physical, mental, and the great thing is I know my limits as far as, what I can help people with mentally. And when I know that it's a little, out of my scope, that's why I have Amy. I can be like, Amy, let's chat about this, or hey, can you see this person for me? Same thing on the nutrition side. It's important to know your limits, but that doesn't mean that you have to let it limit you. That makes sense? Like, I know that I'm not a licensed, social worker, but I do know I have been an athlete. I was a collegiate athlete. I'm still an international athlete. So I know what it's like to go through that mindset change and to how to get there. So, I think the stuff that you do with athletes and just, especially with kids, the youth athletes and how they're growing in this, I think it's super important that parents, that teachers, that coaches understand how impressionable these youth athletes are. And, the stuff that you're doing, I think is great. And I wish that more, coaches, teachers, and parents would hear you out and listen to the stuff that you're saying. Can you expand on that a little bit more, especially with youth athletes for us?
Yeah, their minds are incredible. I mean, just organs to work with. I like to refer to them as muscles, even though, anatomically they're not muscles.
I do too.
Yeah. So the brain, so a lot of the times I'll tell this to parents too, because I can't strap a GoPro on a kid's head as much as I would find enjoyment in that. Maybe I regret saying I have no idea what I'm going to see if I put a GoPro on his head. So, but the example is that I can't be everywhere all the time to see what's going on in their world. And that's where parents are so instrumental to me, and they're so valuable to me because, with, of course, protecting confidentiality, not telling them everything, they can really help me better understand what they're seeing. And we all work together because it does take a village. I think about working with you, how you work with a nutritionist. In athletics especially, it does take a village. You think about even those team carpool rides. It all takes a village to come together. And so when I have the parents in here too, I'll often say, hey, you know what? Do you give me permission? I have to get informed consent to do this, to do a walk and talk with your kid on the beach for a second, just for a session. And they'll be like, okay, for what reason? I'll say, well, I'm going to teach them something that's very important, which also happens to be a 2-4. I'll tell you in a minute. So a lot of times we have to learn how to do these things. And their brains are so open because they want to.
Yeah.
It's learned by reinforcement. And oftentimes too, also I notice, and I know I'm kind of going in 2 different directions for a second, but I notice nowadays with youth athletes, they'll get the solutions from others and they'll want the solutions without wanting to figure out the problem and finding their own solution for the answer or for the, for whatever they're struggling with. And I find that really is a detriment to them because they have an expectation that I think sets them up for failure. A lot of times it's like this idea that, okay, well, we're going to put you in this team. We're going to give you that coach. We're going to give you this expert, this expert. Parents will pour their hearts into getting their youth athlete into all these different hands of these different experts because they want the experts to solve the problem for their kid. So that's where I come in and say, here, let's go. with permission, please allow me to let your, 16, 17, even my pros will come down with me to the beach. They don't have to give me informed consent, but they'll come down with me to the beach. And what are we going to do? We're going to look for rip currents. I love looking for rip currents. So for me, this is where the ocean lifeguarding comes in. As I'm saying, licensed clinical social worker by title, but everything that I take with me and I pour into what I do, it comes from my experiences, which has been beautifully helpful to people. So we're standing on the beach. If you can learn to see which way the water is moving, and you can see what the water looks like when it shifts ever so slightly. If someone were to, I was like, okay, if I'm going to train you to go in to save someone, let's say if I was pretending to drown, I'm not going to torture you, but if I'm going to say, I'm going to pretend out there to drown, how would you come rescue me? And I give them the minute, and you could tell they get a little frustrated. I don't know, I'll just go out straight. I said, no, you're wrong. No issue being blunt here. And I really say, no, try again. And, I want to see what it looks like when they get frustrated, because also, too, youth athletes are geared in this one little category we call perfectionism. Perfectionism. And I love making them struggle because they're not going to hurt. So, and that's beautiful because it allows them to get out of their own way. So when we're looking at the water, and I'm going to tell them, well, look how that watercolor just shifted. It's not the same, is it, anymore? That means sand has moved. That might tell you that might be a rip current. And they watch it. And then, okay, if they learn to navigate, meaning the water, how the water is going to change, by the end of our time together, tell me what I was hoping is that, well, Miss Amy, if you're going to be down there, like down here on the beach, and you're in a rip current, it would make no sense for me to run down to you and go out. I'd probably want to start back here so I could just float to you.
Yeah.
Reacting versus responding. Reacting would just be to go right in. Responding would be like, wow, I'm going to see which way the water's moving. That if I had to, maybe I should just go down a little bit and play with the water, play with what I have. That helps with football. It helps with lacrosse. It helps really play the field to see which way the movement is going. Yeah. And again, it's a 2-4 because then, now that they're not lifeguards officially, at least if they need to, they can help save a life if it came down to it. So giving them real life examples that's educational, taking advantage of the fact that they love to learn, that motivation, that drive that they have, we capitalize it. And like I said, that's been super fun. And my hope is that more coaches, people out there could use and utilize skills just like that. Maybe not the exact example of the ocean, but something similar where you're allowing the kid to learn, but still be challenged and supported. So I'll tell you, if they failed, I wasn't going to put them down. I'm not going to make someone feel terrible when they're trying to learn something, because muscle can hold on to trauma. So we're going to do this in a way that's supportive, educational, challenging, but when you see it translate from one environment to the next, that's where they take off. And like I said, that's been super fun. So
yeah. And
along with the example of how I do it.
No, I think that's great. And I think, what you're saying about challenging kids, especially now, like let them struggle a little bit, because you cannot grow if you're not challenged. And that's the whole champions. You never talk to a champion of any sport, any life event, CEOs, whatever, that haven't had some sort of tough time to go through to figure it out. That's the whole story premises is someone goes through something rough, they learn a lesson, and then they succeed and go past there. So when we are trying to protect our kids, we're really just, like you said, doing them a disservice. So I think, the stuff that you're doing is awesome. And obviously, we connect on a lot of different levels as far as that stuff goes. And I love talking to you. It's always a good time. But can you leave, our listeners, our viewers with some words of encouragement kind of on that champion's mindset and motivation?
When we think about championship mindset, or just being in having the mentality of a champion, embracing and embodying that, one thing I'm going to encourage whoever's listening today to do is to fail smarter, not harder. So I'm just going to elaborate on that real quick, so that way people think, wow, she wants me to fail. Great. No thanks. I know how quickly we're going to jump. So let me just take a minute to break this down. You're never going to succeed more than you'll fail. Why? Because like I said, when we fail, we learn. When we are set back, we're invited to grow. And it's really the best way to learn. You have to fail. You have to do it. Otherwise, your muscles aren't getting the sense that, okay, I should do something differently. Think about when we were growing up. Our nerves had to learn very quickly now to put our hand on a hot stove. Why? Because initially we had to fail by getting burnt to know never to do that again. So we've been doing this for a long time. We're not reinventing the wheel. But when you look at greats, champions, Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, Kobe, too soon. But truly, you see some of these great athletes, you know how many shots, practices, things that they've done. I'm sure even for you, Dr. Meg, how many shots you've taken when you've played that you didn't make, but you still shot it.
Oh, yeah. Reps on reps.
Yes. But the thing is, of all the times that you didn't make it, what people were paying attention to and cheering for is when you did. That's what counts. That's when that's when the magic happens. So we're not celebrating all the attempts. We celebrate when you've made it. And that has to come from failure. So every time you fail, remind yourself, well, you know what? I'm glad I got that fail out of the way. One down, one out of the way. One less one I have to worry about. Take another shot. You don't miss it. Or maybe it gets deflected. Oh, okay. Second one. If you can learn to laugh and desensitize yourself to the idea of fear of failing or failure in itself. Failure, if you think about it, it's how generally we will quantify our motivation too. If we think we failed, we're not good enough or we're not motivated enough. That's what I'm saying. We have to fail smarter, not harder, because I say this all the time. Where motivation fails, discipline will carry you. Discipline is the championship mindset. You have to be disciplined. If you're motivated, that's great, but you're not a champion.
Yeah.
You're trying, but you're not. Discipline embodies the champion because it says, okay, I'm okay with failure. Failure doesn't mean that I'm not equipped or qualified. It means I'm one step closer. And that, if you can keep that in the back of your mind, put it in your pocket, keep it in your bag, whatever and however it's going to stick, I'd be really remiss if I said I wouldn't see in the news somewhere down the road that person, whoever that they've kept this in back of their mind, they're going to be successful. No matter what field of, I don't know, career, sport, they're going to go down. They're always going to have this championship mindset because failure doesn't scare them.
Yeah. That's awesome. You know, I love the way that you phrase that. And I think it's super important. You do have to fail to grow. And like you said, you have to kind of desensitize yourself to that failure and just be like, yep, it's going to happen. So here we go. Let's go again. So, well, Amy, thank you so much for being here today, for being on the Champion Spotlight. It's always a joy to talk to you. How can people reach out to you? How can they check out your TikToks and whatnot?
Oh, I love
if you haven't seen her TikToks, you gotta check them out. It's good stuff.
I gotta say, I mean, like I was saying before, TikTok, something about it, but yeah, that's my self-care. So yes, I mean, you can find me on TikTok. It's Coastal Beaches Therapy, but more often than not, you're gonna find me posting more on Instagram, which is at Coastal Beaches Therapy. You can find me on Facebook, which I really don't even post on anyways, but you can always shoot me a text. You can look on my website, coastalbeachestherapy.com. But as always, it's been a pleasure to speak with you too, Dr. Meg. I love the work that you're doing. You're helping so many athletes and people, and for that, I'm so grateful. So thank you for having me. It's a true honor.
Thanks so much.